Undercover boss watches a dishwasher stay 4 hours after closing, then discovers she's been secretly preventing a disaster that could have destroyed his entire restaurant. Ethan Carter had built 15 successful American grill houses across the Midwest, the kind with polished wood bars, crowded Friday nights, and managers who swore every location ran flawlessly. He trusted reports, maintenance contracts, and monthly inspections. So when the flagship restaurant in downtown Chicago started showing inconsistent repair costs and minor equipment complaints that didn't quite add up, Ethan did what few CEOs would ever consider. He went undercover. With a trimmed beard, worn work boots, and a name tag that read Eric, he took a job on the night utility crew. No one questioned the quiet new hire scrubbing sinks at 10:45 p.m. People don't expect the owner to be hauling trash beside them. For 3 days, Ethan kept his head down and observed. A line cut corners on prep. 2 servers exaggerated their hours. The assistant manager ordered premium supplies but stocked cheaper alternatives. Small issues. Fixable. But someone else caught his attention. Hannah Brooks, dishwasher, 39, 8 months employed. Never late. Never called in sick. And never left on time. Hannah, you can clock out. Lauren, the closing manager, called from the office at 11:03 p.m. Don't stay late. Yes, ma'am, Hannah replied calmly. Ethan watched her through the reflection of a stainless steel prep table as she finished the final rack, spray, stack, slide. Her movements steady despite a slammed Saturday shift. She clocked out at 11:05, hung up her apron, grabbed her backpack, and walked out the back door. Ethan checked his watch. He had noticed something the night before, a faint glow inside the kitchen nearly an hour after closing. Tonight, he stayed. He slipped into the dry storage room and left the door slightly cracked. At 11:42 p.m., the back door clicked open again. Hannah stepped inside. She didn't turn on the main lights. Under the dim emergency fluorescence, she set down her backpack and removed a small, well-used toolkit. Ethan felt his pulse quicken, not from suspicion, but curiosity. This was why he ran undercover operations, to see what happened when no one thought they were being watched. Hannah walked straight to the commercial stove and knelt behind it. With practiced ease, she removed a lower panel and pulled out a handheld gas detector from her bag, professional grade. She ran it slowly along a junction labeled C3. The device emitted a faint chirp. Her jaw tightened. She wrote something in a spiral notebook and began tightening a fitting with careful precision. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Over the next hour, she moved through the kitchen methodically. She opened the walk-in cooler panel and brushed debris from the condenser coils. She studied the fire suppression gauge above the fryers, tapped it lightly, and recorded another note. She replaced a frayed extension cord near the prep station with commercial-grade wiring she had clearly purchased herself. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, almost protective. There was no sign of fear or rush, only focus. By 1:30 a.m., she returned to the gas line and tested it again. Then again. 3 checks before resealing the panel. Ethan crouched in the shadows, stunned. He paid licensed maintenance contractors thousands each month, yet here was his dishwasher performing textbook-level preventative work in the dark, unpaid. At 2:48 a.m., Hannah stood in the center of the silent kitchen. The city hum drifted faintly through brick walls. She slowly turned in a circle, scanning the appliances, shelves, and pipes as if taking inventory of something deeply personal. She pulled out her phone, snapped one photo of the stove line, and whispered softly, "Not on my watch." The words settled heavily in Ethan's chest. She packed her tools, wiped down the panel she'd opened, and locked the back door behind her with a small key he hadn't authorized. Ethan remained still long after she left. Then he stepped out and knelt behind the stove himself. The fittings were secure. The workmanship flawless. He checked the cooler coils, clean. The shelving bracket she'd adjusted no longer wobbled. Everything she touched was better than before. He pulled out his phone and typed a single note. Hannah Brooks, returns after close. Not stealing. Maintaining. What? Sitting in his car at 3:15 a.m., staring at the darkened restaurant, Ethan felt something unfamiliar creeping in. Whatever Hannah Brooks was doing wasn't random, and it wasn't reckless. It was intentional. And for the first time since going undercover, he wondered whether the most important person in his entire operation might be the one washing dishes long after everyone else had gone home. For the next several nights, Ethan didn't go home when his shift ended. As Eric, he clocked out at 11 p.m., stretched like he was exhausted, and headed out the back door with everyone else. Then he circled the block, slipped through the side entrance he'd quietly unlatched earlier, and hid in the dry storage room with the door cracked open. And every single night, Hannah Brooks came back. She clocked out like policy required, left the building, waited just long enough for the manager to drive away, and returned around 11:40 p.m., backpack over her shoulder, face calm and focused. She never acted nervous. She never rushed. She moved like someone stepping into a responsibility, not breaking a rule. Monday night, she opened the industrial dishwasher panel and adjusted a component Ethan didn't recognize, tightening bolts and clearing buildup with steady hands. Tuesday, she spent nearly an hour in the walk-in cooler, brushing condenser coils and checking seals, pressing her ear against the compressor housing as if listening for something deeper than noise. Wednesday, she went straight to the fire suppression system above the fryers, unscrewing the access panel and studying the pressure gauge. Her expression tightened slightly. She pulled a small reader from her bag, attached it to the line, and wrote down numbers in her spiral notebook. The pages were filled, dates, notes, diagrams. This wasn't new behavior. This had been happening for months. By Thursday, Ethan's curiosity had shifted into something heavier. Hannah wasn't tinkering. She was monitoring patterns, tracking weaknesses, anticipating failures before they happened. That afternoon, during break in the alley, Ethan finally asked, "You ever work maintenance before?" Hannah hesitated before answering. "My mom did," she said quietly. "Commercial HVAC tech. Licensed. One of the best in Detroit." She kept her eyes on the pavement. She could walk into a restaurant and tell you what was wrong just by listening. Ethan nodded. "What happened?" Hannah's jaw flexed. "Gas explosion. Inspection crew signed off on a line that wasn't stable." She swallowed. "They said it was safe." The words hung between them. "She always told me, if you know something's wrong and you walk past it, that's on you." Hannah looked down at her hands. "So I don't walk past things." That night, Ethan didn't need to guess where she'd go first. At 11:43 p.m., she slipped back inside and headed straight for Junction C3 behind the main stove. She ran her handheld gas detector along the seam. It chirped faintly. She ran it again, louder this time. Hannah froze. Slowly, she removed the lower panel, depressurized the line properly, and replaced a worn gasket from a sealed package she'd brought with her. Her movements were precise, practiced, deeply familiar. When she resealed the junction, she tested it 3 times before writing several urgent notes in her book. She didn't look satisfied. She looked worried. Around 2:30 a.m., she checked the cooler compressor again, resting her palm against the metal housing, eyes closed, listening. Then she stood in the center of the dark kitchen and slowly turned in a circle, scanning everything like a guardian finishing rounds. She didn't whisper tonight. She just exhaled and packed up. After she left, Ethan stepped out and examined the gas line himself. The repair was flawless, professional grade, necessary, and for the first time, a cold realization settled in his chest. If Hannah hadn't been coming back every night, that junction would have continued degrading. The pressure gauge would have kept misreading. The compressor would have worsened. Small issues would have stacked quietly until one of them wasn't small anymore. The next morning, a corporate security alert landed in Ethan's private inbox. Unauthorized after-hours access. Repeated policy violations. Recommendation, immediate termination. Ethan stared at the screen, pulse slowing into something grim. Corporate saw liability. He saw the only person in the building actively preventing catastrophe. And as he closed the email, one thought echoed louder than the gas detector's warning chirp. If they fired Hannah for breaking policy, they'd be removing the only thing standing between this restaurant and a disaster no inspection report would see coming. Friday morning arrived cold and gray, and Hannah had no idea it would be her last shift. Ethan stood hidden in the hallway outside the office as the regional director, Mark Ellison, delivered the news in a flat corporate tone. Repeated unauthorized after-hours access. Violation of safety protocol. Immediate termination. Hannah didn't argue. She tried once to explain about Junction C3, about the pressure inconsistencies in the suppression system, about the cooler compressor vibrating beyond normal tolerance. Mark cut her off. "That's not your responsibility." Hannah's voice stayed steady, but her eyes glistened. It becomes my responsibility when I see it. 10 minutes later, she walked out the back door carrying her backpack and toolkit. Ethan let her go, and it was the worst mistake he had made in 15 years of running restaurants. 3 days later, the city inspection team arrived. They moved through the kitchen methodically, coolers, wiring, ventilation. Everything seemed fine at first. Then the lead inspector knelt behind the stove. Her gas detector beeped immediately. Critical violation, she said. She pointed to junction C3. Temporary patch. Entire section needs replacement. Next came the fire suppression system. The gauge read safe, but her manual reading told a different story. Pressure dangerously low. Then the cooler compressor. Bearing failure imminent. Each note on her clipboard felt like a direct echo of Hannah's warnings. Within an hour, the flagship Chicago location was issued a partial closure. No hot food service. 72 hours to correct the violations or face full shutdown. Mark was furious. The manager was in tears. And Ethan stood in the center of the chaos, knowing exactly why this had happened. He removed his cap. "My name isn't Eric," he said quietly. "It's Ethan Carter." Silence fell over the office. "I've been working here undercover for 2 weeks," he continued. "And you just fired the only person who was preventing this." He laid Hannah's photograph notebook pages on the desk. Dates, readings, diagrams, part numbers. Months of unpaid, meticulous oversight. "She wasn't a liability," Ethan said. "She was our safety net." He stepped outside and made the call. "Hannah, it's Ethan Carter. I owe you an apology." A long pause. "I figured," she said softly. "You were right about everything. We failed inspection because you weren't here." Another pause. "I already ordered the replacement parts for C3, she admitted. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. "I'd like you to come back. Not as a dishwasher. As Director of Facilities and Safety. Salary, full benefits, authority to oversee every location. You'll build the system we should have had all along." The line stayed quiet for several seconds. "I don't want a title," Hannah said finally. "I just don't want anyone getting hurt." "That's exactly why you're the right person," Ethan replied. She returned that afternoon. Together, they replaced the gas line properly. Certified contractors corrected the suppression system and cooler bearing under her supervision. When inspectors returned 2 days later, the restaurant passed with one of the highest safety scores the department had issued that year. 3 months later, emergency repair costs across all locations dropped by nearly 70%. Preventative maintenance logs were implemented company-wide. A new policy rewarded employees who reported or corrected safety risks instead of punishing initiative. And in the Chicago kitchen, near the dish station where Hannah once stood alone after midnight, a framed photo now hangs. Hannah beside her mother in work boots, smiling under a rooftop HVAC unit. Below it reads, "If you see something broken and you know how to fix it, you have a responsibility." Ethan visits that location every month. Not to inspect, but to remember. Because he learned something no spreadsheet could ever show him. Sometimes the most important person in your company is the one who stays 4 hours after closing, long after everyone else has gone home.